Over the last year or two, I've been having a lot of interesting conversations with ex-Catholics and definitely Protestants, but I want to focus in on ex-Catholics in this video here that I think can really summed up in kind of two camps, because I got no problem if someone leaves the church because they simply just disagree with it. Maybe they know the church's teachings, they just think they're not right. Maybe they outright just don't believe in God anymore. They're just like, I just don't believe this stuff at all. Still have to kind of work on that person. That's fine. I can kind of take that. But the person who leaves, and when you present them with some sound arguments, sound theological arguments to kind of counter their issues, that's the part where I start to kind of push back a bit. And whenever I engage with ex-Catholics specifically, that 9 times out of 10 are going to these like big Bible-believing churches and parishes, and I ask them like why they left, I rarely, if I've ever heard any kind of like good, sound-rooted argument that was rooted in some sort of theological argument that quickly couldn't get, if they did have an argument, it quickly couldn't be debunked in like literally a very easy Google search if they wanted to look it up themselves. So like I said, I really sum this up in two camps. The first of which is that these are ex-Catholics that leave purely on emotion or convenience based. They leave because they say they quote, aren't being fed, or they weren't getting something out of their local parish. This could be simply like the homily from the priest or community engagement. They might not feeling welcome. There's not as many activities, they don't like the music, and they're ultimately missing the mark of what Sunday worship is. And it's not just going there to get something out of it, right? We're there for sacrifice. We're there for God, to give him his due. We're not there to get something out of it. And so they inevitably leave because of the attractive allure in some places of good music, good communities, tons of really engaging stuff for the kids. And I can see this locally. There's a place by me that does the same thing. They're pulling half the whole community, which is a big giant mega church, is all ex-Catholics. And when I talk to people, it's the same kind of thing. And it's not to say those things aren't important. Those are all very great and good things. And I always tell the people, like, if you want those things, we could use you in the Catholic Church to help build those up in the local parish. But they can't overshadow and miss the mark of, what truly Sunday worship is. Worship, quote unquote, is not just singing, praise songs, however you want to define that. The Eucharist is part and parcel of the essential point of our Catholic worship. And many of these people actually still consider themselves Catholics. They just find like, well, I can still be a Christian. I can still consider myself a Catholic. I can just go here and, I get more out of it here. Again, they use that word. And I try to explain to them, like, this is really the flavor of the month. A lot of these Bible churches, even the one I'm talking about, goes through changes in leadership, changes in pastors, where people leave and they change names. And I'm like, you're just going to jump ship every time what you don't like, that flavor of that particular church changes. And instead of just staying true to like what the core root, which is Christ's true church and the Eucharist. And when you present some of these subtle little arguments back to them, even just the Eucharist simply as being, a lot of times they'll still accept the Eucharist. The glaze comes over and they realize they're kind of wrong, but they still hold on to that emotion of like, well, I can't leave this community. I can't leave these. My kids really love these programs they have. I'm like, okay, you're missing the mark of what we're doing. And this is one of the problems we have. Which goes on to the second thing that I want to get into, which is extreme poor catechesis. And I'll kind of summarize this in a recent story. And I got so many stories like this. This one literally happened to me about a week ago. It's really motivated me to make this video. I was talking with an individual who was a retired individual who spent the majority of his adult career, after a career change, doing youth ministry. He was a Catholic. He still considers himself a Catholic, which is ironic in itself and kind of get into. But he left the Catholic Church after having a conversation with someone who led him astray, in my opinion. I would say it's a fact, though. He led him astray out of the Catholic Church by telling him some things about the Catholic Church that he said the Catholic Church's teaching that is not in the Bible. And as good Catholics know, everything we teach, everything we have, any dogma of the church is rooted in biblical scripture. But the person told him a lot of just errors, and the person thought that was surprising, and it was very classical stuff. You typically hear Protestants say, but some were just outrageous, that totally were just wrong. And the surprising thing about this person, like I said, he made a career change into youth ministry. So he left his job. He didn't even go to seminary school, but he got into youth ministry, went in kind of like Protestant churches and started doing that. I don't know how he fell into it, but that's what he did. So he had some theology. He's in the business of religion, if you want to say it that way. And even he, who was a Catholic up to the age of like his mid-30s or something like that, before he did the career change, didn't know basic tenets of the faith when he was presented with some sort of counter arguments. So the person said something to him. Well, I just asked him, I said, what's not in the Bible that the Catholic Church is teaching? He's like, well, the Catholic Church is teaching all these, just things like, Mary can forgive sins, or that the Bible's not inerrant. And I said, what are you talking about? That is, first off, that's baseline stuff. I even asked my kids later, after my oldest is 9, I said, does Mary forgive sins? I'm asking them, a 9-year-old, these questions. And I'm an adult male who spent the majority of his life, who, according to him, didn't want to leave the Catholic Church. If he really didn't want to leave and take any effort, he'd tell me you couldn't find a priest, or again, I don't think the internet was around that time. These are very simple rebuttals that if some people are pressed with these type of questions about the Catholic Church, just shows me that either they had, literally, it's just total laziness about to actually investigate these things, and you're just going on a whim of what someone was saying. But really, most importantly, what I think really is the truth is the fact that you left the church because you wanted some excuse to leave the church off of, again, baseline emotion. So I think a lot of stuff kind of goes hand in hand, that you are leaving the Catholic Church because some sort of emotion, becomes some sort of a convenience of something that just makes your life easier, because leaving the Catholic faith is a much harder road to take than the Protestant way, which is reading the Bible, being your own pope, essentially, and interpreting it however you like. Now, you can say you use the Bible alone, but we all know with all the different denominations, there's all sorts of interpretations. You're only as good as your influence and your teacher. And so I kind of want to finalize all this stuff and to say that this is an ultimate huge problem. When you talk to ex-Catholics, you have to engage them and ask them a little bit, because 9 times out of 10, if you have a local family member or someone and they leave the Catholic Church, start probing them with these simple questions. You're going to come up with 1 or 2 reasons. It is because of pure emotion based, and it's fine if they want to admit that and just say, you know what, maybe you're right. I just like the music, and I like the music over the Eucharist, and I don't believe the Eucharist. Okay, then I can't do anything about that point. I can I can at least maybe work on that in the future, but I had no rebuttal to that. But if someone says, again, they left the Catholic Church because of errors and they're doing something wrong, then I'm like, hey, tell me what this is and let's work that out, because there's nothing that you can't find. There's no possible thing that you can find. And I'm realizing this now when you talk to like professional Protestants, ones that really know the Bible front and back. They got some sort of rebuttals. Even don't be intimidated by them, because when they talk to them one-on-one, you realize they don't know the basics of church history, don't know the basics of the Catholic Church, and it's very easy to talk to them. However, again, they're very stubborn in their ways, and they won't admit when they're wrong. So I say all these things with utmost charity to bring Catholics back home. Don't let them kind of go away. If you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know, this is your opportunity to kind of educate yourselves, but then find out. That's always a great conversation piece. You talk to someone who's a Protestant, because odds are 9 times out of 10, I find a lot of these Bible churches, they are ex-Catholics, and I will ask them, why they left, and kind of explore this a little deeper. Those are all great things that those churches are doing well. You can do them in your local parish if you want to, but at the end of the day, also don't mix in the world with your church. That's essentially found throughout the whole Bible, and I think a lot of Protestants are missing the mark in that regard. It's my humble opinion. That's it, though.